So I want to impress on you the care that's put into our diets, and people think of us as a really big company, but it's still one guy at the helm, which is pretty impressive. So today, we're really talking about building a better bowl. Now, how many of you feed a kibble diet? Okay, not a thing wrong with that. I've sold kibble for many, many years, put my kids through college, and I'm not anti-kibble, just so you know. And I'm not here to try to convince you to never feed kibble again or only feed raw. What I'm here to convince you is there are things that you could add to that bowl that would elevate the health of your pet, raise the palatability, and give them some whole food sources. Now, some of you, if you're on social media, you're seeing, well, I post a lot of pictures of my dogs, so then I get a lot of ads that are dog related. You'll see Ollie or the farmer's dog or all these fresh foods, right? But if you go on their website and you kind of figure out what that's going to cost you, you have to mortgage your house unless you have a 10-pound dog. The beauty of what we have to offer is you can get those benefits of adding some fresh food to your pet's diet. You can still use the kibble that you're familiar with, that you know your dog has done well on, but you can enhance that diet by adding some fresh foods. And really, the bonus of adding fresh foods is the simplest concept of all. If you remember nothing else that we talk about tonight, but this one sentence, this one caveat of raw feeding or fresh food feeding, it's this: moisture. It's not magical. All we're doing is adding moisture to the pet's diet. There have been studies, 40% of dogs and 70% of domestic cats walk around chronically dehydrated. How many people's dogs will drink out of the toilet if you let them? None? Nobody here?
You're too short.
But really, it's because it's the coldest, freshest water in the house. You know, we tend to forget. We see, oh, there's water in the bowl. We think that's okay. It's really not. We need to be changing that water all the time. Cats especially are not hardwired to get their moisture from lapping out of a bowl. They're hardwired to get their moisture from their food. So when we feed a raw diet to a cat, because in the wild, what do? They catch prey, they have the juices of the body, that's how they fulfill their drinking need. Dogs are different, but cats, that's how they're hardwired to get their moisture. So when we pull that out, we've taken away one of the most life-giving things, which is moisture. We'll talk about the other one in a minute. So anyways, all I want to do today is open your eyes to some of the things that we carry, where you could back off on some of the kibble that you're feeding and add some of these to enhance the palatability, to add moisture to your pet's diet, and to do some things that can help heal from within. We know that food can heal from within. We know we can see better skin, better coat on ourselves. I mean, how many women's magazines talk about how we should be drinking X amount of ounces per day, and how many of us do it? So I'm just going to get started real quick. This item right here we launched in 2014. This item is also our #1 selling item by unit. That's actually really impressive that this has only been around for 5 years and it's our #1 selling item. So goat milk's a universal milk. Any mammal can drink goat milk without stomach upset. In third world countries where they'll lose a mother in childbirth, if they can't find a wet nurse who will nurse the baby for that child, they'll raise the baby on goat milk. We're the only country in the world that drinks less goat milk than cow milk. So when I talk to people from other lands, they're, oh yeah, I grew up on goat milk. So goat milk's the vessel, okay? Then we add 4 probiotics. So kind of think of this like Activia for pets. So there's 4 probiotics added. Then we add cinnamon, which is a natural healer and a blood sugar leveler. If you read Prevention Magazine, they'll tell you a teaspoon of cinnamon a day. You're shaking your head. I actually do put it in my coffee every day. I'm a gardener. If I cut off a plant, I'll rub cinnamon on the wound, and I'll also rub cinnamon on what I'm planting because it's a natural. So I've known that for a long time. But not everybody's a plant person, so I thought I'd throw that in. So you got cinnamon, it's a natural healer and a blood sugar leveler. Turmeric, which is for joint health and is also an anti-cancer herb. And then the final thing is ginger, which we all know settles the stomach. So it packs a powerful punch. And most importantly, it adds what? Moisture. They're very good, very good. Comes in 2 sizes. Now, excuse me. Thank you. Great question. You can do it in a million different ways. How many of you ever pour milk on your own cereal? Get the correlation? We could just pour it right on the kibble, right? Exactly. I have people that have a goat milk. You know, you're always looking for a new treat. Sometimes you stand at the wall of treats and you're like, now which one should I get? I feel like I've tried this one and that one. How about just this? Just put it in a bowl in the middle of the day. That will work. And I keep hearing my phone go off and it's driving me crazy, so I apologize. So it can be a treat in the middle of the day. You can mix it in with your kibble. I do feed frozen raw. I pour it on my raw. If you have a really tiny pet and you're even looking at the smaller bottle and think that might be too much, this will last 7 to 10 days once you thaw it. It comes to you frozen. But these handy little things come in perfect, and you can even get tinier ones at Michael's. Take your milk or your broth that we're going to talk about, or your elixirs, which we're going to talk about, and you can put them in here, and then you just pop out, you make your bags of them, and then you just pop one out and put it in the bowl the night before. You can't. You can't. I wouldn't, like anything else, I wouldn't defrost and refreeze, but defrost and you can absolutely. Exactly. Exactly.
How much do you recommend for most of us small dogs?
10-pound dog, and I'll tell you, I find this, my boss isn't here right now, so I can say this. I find this is where you start. Okay, especially if you've got a yeasty dog with the red stains, that's yeast. Many times that you can heal that from within with getting probiotics in their system. Now, if it's a really bad case of yeast, you may need to get something orally to get to baseline, and then you can maintain that over time with the goat milk. So if somebody asked me, and I'm doing this now without glasses, a 20-pound dog is 2 ounces. Okay? If you have a toy dog, I say start with a teaspoon. Just give them a little bit and work their way up. But I'll be honest with you, if you have an issue, maybe it's skin and coat, because we're going to moisturize that skin and coat, and what's going to happen, a healthy hair follicle is moisturized. So the more moisture in the diet, the healthier that hair follicle is going to be, and it's actually going to help with, not going to reduce, I'm not saying it's going to reduce shedding, but it will help with shedding. And shedding really should be a seasonal occurrence, except in Florida where it's hot all the time. But that moisturizer is, the moisturized hair follicle is a healthy hair follicle. Just like the fats that would be, say, in our raw food, because they're coming from a natural source. It's not a rendered fat, it's a fat from the animal that it says on the front of the bag. Becomes bioavailable, much easier for the pet to use, and you'll see a healthier hair follicle because that fat is an honest fat from the meat that they're eating. Make sense? Okay.
Can you explain rendering?
Rendering would be like a process. It's heated. They'll get many pet foods, and there's nothing wrong with this, use chicken fat in every diet. Where with ours, with a raw diet, if it's chicken on the bag, we have chicken fat in there. But if it's lamb, then it's lamb fat. Venison, it's venison fat. And again, anytime you can give food in a fresh way, and this is true for us. If you took a 1-a-day vitamin or ate right, if you've ever taken a vitamin, you know usually when you eliminate, your urine can be a different color because it's what your body's not using. But if you can eat right, and of course we don't all, and for some it's just easier to do it that way, or a raw carrot versus a steamed carrot or a boiled carrot, which one are you going to get the most nutritional value from?
Raw.
The raw. So it's not rendered, it's not changed in any way. Make sense? Okay, so think of the goat milk like Activia for people.
Everybody's getting a pint of goat milk in your goodie bag tonight. You get some goat milk. You get some goat milk.
So then we're gonna talk about our bone broth. Okay. So first benefit of bone broth is moisture. Good job. All right. Then what we do. This is the only product that we actually use any heat source to at all. It's a slow roast at 170 degrees for 18 hours. You put the bones in water with apple cider vinegar, and it pulls all the good stuff, all the marrow, out of the bone, and it becomes a liquid form. We all know that a liquid vitamin versus a powdered vitamin, it's going to become bioavailable much easier and can be a part of the body, whether it's a human body or a pet body. Fun fact is, a human bone broth company makes our bone broth. Do any of you drink bone broth yourself? Because it's all the rage in natural food stores right now. The Oh So Good company out of Marin County makes our bone broth for us.
So this is edible?
It's not because they use our sourcing, and we can't, it's done in a human facility, but because we're a pet food company, we can't say that. Okay? So you make any assumption you want to make. And you're not going to see anything like onions or garlic or that type of thing in ours. And you're not going to have the sodium levels. This is not Swainson's bone broth. This is very, very gelatinous, especially the pork. When I say gelatinous, it almost looks like a gel when you squeeze it out. Now, if you warm it, and we have to say to warm it because California law, where we're from, says that we have to say we warm it, but I'm going to tell you right now, my dogs have never had it warm. Well, I shouldn't say that. Generally, they don't have it warm. If I have some frozen food that's a little frozen, I'll warm it to help thaw the frozen. But pour it right from the bag. And the beauty of this is you can't do this wrong. None of these things you can do wrong. We don't even give you an amount on this. Squirt. Because we all like to put gravy on our dog's food, right? And all dogs love gravy on their food. But there's benefits to this, and there's two distinct benefits. One is intestinal, in the gut, in the intestines. This gelatinous nature, has anybody heard of diverticulitis in people?
Yes.
Oh, wow. All right, so we got some bone broth customers here. So basically, crevices are created that aren't healthy, and when you eat food, pieces of food, especially seeds and nuts, can get lodged in there. So if it sits in there over time, it festers, and it actually turns into, you've got a medical thing on here, it festers. What happens with bone broth is, it heals and seals the gut so that gelatinous nature actually goes in the little crevices and helps seals it. And people use this for humans as well because of the gelatinous nature. So we've got that out of the way. But remember I told you about the process, it's taking all the good stuff from the inside of the bones. So if it's in a liquid form and they ingest it, where do you think that might help? Joints. Okay. Yes?
Can you use that instead of water on the dehydrated?
Yes. Absolutely.
No water.
Yeah, you can use that instead of water if you'd like. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes?
And can you use that and the goat milk together?
Yes. Yes, and we're going to talk about some fun mixtures in a minute. But yes, you can. Yes?
What did that poop?
What about the poop?
I want to know how to change the poop. It's going to be wet and yucky and
No,
pick it up.
actually, it's not. It's not. It will be a healthy stool, which a healthy stool shouldn't be rock hard, as much as we love that as we're picking it up, but it should be formed. It should be formed. But it'll be soft.
So easy to pick up, but soft.
Yes, it's not going to be like a rock.
Okay.
Though, if you're feeding raw food stools are about a third the size of a kibble fed. Those tend to be a harder stool. They're very easy to pick up because there's no waste. They're using pretty much everything. Listen, my boss would tell me to say absolutely, positively yes. You do everything slow because everybody's body is different, right? Very quickly, I took in a foster dog that was grossly overweight and had terrible skin and coat, and of course I'm a raw feeder. I just changed her cold turkey and she never had one day of diarrhea. So it can be done, but as primal, I can't tell you that. And it's always a smart thing, especially because we don't know our dog systems and what they might react to. So I think it's always good to start them slow. You know, and many times you gotta remember, a lot of these things are different textures. They're different temperatures than they're used to. So sometimes they may not like it from the jump. It's something that you have to keep introducing over a period of time. They're super palatable. A lot of dogs will just go. But texture is very bizarre, especially for cats. And sometimes they have to get used to what the texture is. So we've got the goat milk we talked about. So hip and joint, you think, well, I don't have an old dog. You know what? hip and joint. What if you have a golden retriever puppy, or a Labrador, or a Newfoundland, or a German Shepherd? We all know what happens as they age. The first signs of the aging with those breeds is generally hip and joint. What if we were constantly giving bone broth in that little body from the time it's small? Could we push off maybe Cosequin for a while, or God forbid, a pain killer that costs $1 jillion at the vet and can help destroy their liver? This, for a small dog with floating patellas, we're going to take all that stuff that's coming out of the bones in a liquid form is going to go back in, and will lubricate the joints. So there's a lot of applications. I think a lot of times people think elderly dogs only. Yes, sir.
So we have an older dog, and he's on Cosequin.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do this, should we stop that?
No. I can't tell you that it's going to, at this point, if he's to the point that he, you think he's needing Cosequin. I have a 3-legged dog. She's on Cosequin, okay, because she's got extra pressure on her front leg. But she gets goat milk and she gets the bone broth as well. All you're doing is adding in. They're all going to work in different ways. In this, we're just taking the natural elements of the bones, the marrow, all the good stuff, and putting it in a liquid form that the body can easily assimilate. I'm going to take a drink because if you can tell, my throat's not.
What's your best-selling broth?
Best-selling broth, funny enough, is chicken, but it's generally always the best-selling dog food, even though everybody thinks their dog's allergic to chicken. Chicken's always the best seller. Chicken, then beef, then turkey, and then pork. I will tell you, the only bone broth my dogs get is the pork because it's the most gelatinous. But people have a weird connotation about pork. Our pork is sourced. We didn't have pork or in anything, or even a pork food for years, because we couldn't find sourcing that aligned with Matt's sourcing values, because we use all humanely raised meats. So it just took probably 4 years ago before we got a humanely raised pork. We have a whole handout about how our pork is handled, because it's so crazy. It's down to the guys who drive the pork have special certification. And if you in high school learned about pork in gestational cages, we don't have any of that going on. But people have a weird connotation about pork and trichinosis from back in the 50s and 60s, which is from dirty conditions. And trust me, they're not in dirty conditions. So you've got this that's good for the stomach. You think your activity for pets. You've got the bone broth, which is for hip and joint or for intestinal. And then I'm sorry? All right, the teeth. Really, the best thing in our line for our teeth would be our raw bones. Okay, so it's got all the good stuff that's inside that bone, but there's enzymes in meat that create an acidic mouth. In an acidic mouth, plaque and tartar cannot form. But let's say you're not feeding a full raw diet, because if you have a dog on raw diet, they will keep pearly white teeth because their mouth is acidic. But if you have a kibble-fed dog, if you did 2 raw bones a week, they get the enzymatic properties from the outside of the meat, and they get the mechanical from chewing on the bone. So think kind of like toothbrush, toothpaste. It's a double whammy with the raw bone. Keeps them busy forever. They're very clean because there's no heat applied to them. They don't splinter. My dogs, I'm not telling you all have to do that, but I have special towels. They know that's their place, okay? And if we're doing laundry and we're folding the towels, they're all sitting around us because they think they're going to get a raw bone. It is really the cutest thing. And we've trained 2 puppies. Most of our dogs have been rescued, but we have had 2 puppies. And 1 raw bone, you put it back and you tell them place. And now if they're chewing and it just falls off the towel, they pick it up and put it back on the towel. It's amazing. And it's a high-value treat. They don't want to lose it. 2 trips to the couch where you take it away and say no place, they learn really fast when it's something high value. So to me, the dental properties of the meat on the bones or a complete raw diet. She won't chew the bones.
Not there for nothing. Only God I've ever known.
Have you tried a raw bone? Because it does smell a little different, yeah? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I ain't doing it.
Yeah. That's the best for the dental. Is the enzymatic properties of the meat.
She's always been on your food, so.
Yeah, well, We don't all like asparagus. So.
Well, there you go. She does like that.
Well, there you go. Well, that's like there's probably plenty of people here that don't. Excuse me. The final thing is our elixirs, and we have 3 different kinds. Well, I have tea here, but I'm trying not to be rude and keep drinking it.
Okay. Yeah, sure that's tea.
Yeah. Oh, I wish. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you. That's very sweet. Drop it in my hand. Okay. So these are super excited, and I think these are one of our newest entries into the fresh food. The first one is our squash elixir. It's winter squash, because actually winter squash is less of an allergen than summer squash. Who knew? I didn't until we came out with this product. This has the exact same 4 probiotics that are in our goat milk. So it's another way. How many of you have ever given your dog pumpkin when they've had diarrhea? How many of you have ever cleaned out your fridge 2 weeks later and there's a crusty half can of pumpkin in your fridge? Okay, so we're going to go back to this. So, how many of you have had to go out late because your dog got diarrhea at 10:30 at night and all of a sudden you were looking for Publix open? The beauty of this squash is you put them in some of these, you use what you need, because pumpkin and squash will work for diarrhea or constipation because it's fiber. Also, if you've got a dog that you're trying to get some weight off of, you can cut back the food and give it some squash because it's very filling with the fiber. It's got the same probiotics, but then you can put them in here. So the next time the dog has diarrhea at 10:30, instead of going out to Publix, you go to your freezer, you pop up a couple of the, depending on the size of the dog, of the squash little frozen, and you're good to go. So it's a great way. Now if you take the squash and you mix it with the milk in their bowl, we call that gut goo. So we can mix all of these. Somebody asked that question earlier. You can mix all of these. If you go on our primalpetfoods.com website, there's actually an interactive called Build Your Bowl. Go to Build Your Bowl and you can virtually try all the different things. You can get videos on each product because you're not going to remember everything tonight, as however good of a student you are or were. So this is gut goo. So the next one is our green smoothie elixir. So this is a kale, a green smoothie, just like we would expect, green smoothie to be for us. But it also has 7 medicinal mushrooms in it. Anybody familiar with medicinal mushrooms at all? Okay. Lion's mane, turkey tail, which when my dog had cancer, they immediately put her on turkey tail mushroom. So this is a staple of my tripod's diet. The fantastic, it's an immune boost. So immediately everybody's like, oh, it's a dog that's a rescue, or maybe a puppy that's not thriving, or a mother that's nursing puppies. But what about the dog that just seems to be itching and scratching, or not a very luxurious coat, or real scaly coat? What we found is we're getting feedback from consumers saying within 5 days of this, their dogs, especially if it's environmentally motivated, because a lot of it's not food, but we go to the food right away. Within 5 days, they see a reduction in the itching and scratching with the medicine. Anytime on any of these things that you can take food and back off of the amount of whatever you're having to give is a good thing.
Especially with apple.
Yeah. Okay, this is like the bone broth, to be honest with you. This is a dollop or 2. So, a small dog, you start out with like a teaspoon or 2. My big dogs get 2 heaping tablespoons. But I rotate through all of them, so they're always getting something. But there's not a real, because it's food. I think people want to think that it's a supplement or anything. These are just food. So, you can't go wrong. You can't do it wrong. You just have to look at how much, of course there's calories involved. So cut back on some of the kibble. Yes, ma'am?
That's frozen, right?
So
how long, I have 2.
7 days. That's your answer. And once you open it and
And it also comes in a
it does come in a smaller one.
size.
Thank you. Thank you very much for doing that. Or you can refreeze into ice cube trays. You'll get to the point, whether you buy the big or the small, you'll know how much you use in a week.
You can refreeze it?
Yes, you can put these in one time. I mean, it probably could be more, but just like anything else, if you freeze and refreeze food, it kind of gets. But yeah, that's the whole point. That's what's so great. And you'll get to the point, like if you start to buy the big one, even if you have a small dog, you know, all right, I can go through half of this in a week. So let's take the other half right now. I'll throw it in here, and it's in the freezer, and it's ready to go. So there's the medicinal mushrooms. So think immune boost and skin and coat, skin and coat, skin and coat. It's going to make a difference. And if you've got a dog that you just rescued,